Sent to Kyiv. Talk to our correspondent Gulliver Cragg, who joins us from there. Gulliver, why then has there been this huge falling out between the two countries?
Well, first of all, we should perhaps make it clear that Mateusz Morawiecki used the present tense in his declaration in Polish. He said, we're not supplying arms to Ukraine. We're concentrating on our own, building up our own defences. And he also said that Poland would continue to allow Ukrainian agricultural produce to transit through the country to its ports. The fact is, though, that the ports don't really have the capacity to export much of that. And he said that Poland would continue to allow other allies of Ukraine to use the airport at Rzeszów in southeast Poland, which is a key hub for supplying arms and other supplies to Ukraine. So it's perhaps not quite as radical as it sounds. All that being said, though, clearly in terms of rhetoric, the Polish government has taken a turn against Ukraine very, very strongly. They're very angry with the way Kyiv reacted to its embargo on agricultural produce. But the way it's being interpreted in Kyiv and elsewhere is that it's not really so much about that as about Polish electoral politics. Poland has a general election on the 15th of October. The ruling party is in trouble due to a corruption scandal, and it's losing votes to the far right, which has a much more anti-Ukrainian stance, if you like. And so Kyiv is accusing Warsaw basically of populism, pandering to the far right with this anti-Ukrainian rhetoric and with these anti-Ukrainian moves. It all comes also after Volodymyr Zelensky at the United Nations said that by putting this embargo that Poland has put on Ukrainian grain, Poland was, the word he used, setting the stage for Russia, basically helping Russia with its international blackmail, as the Ukrainians see it, using hunger as a weapon by forcing food prices up. The Ukrainians reckon that wherever they're able to export their grain to, with the Black Sea being largely blocked by Russian warships, that's good for grain prices around the world, bad for Russia's plans to manipulate those grain prices.
Gulliver, both Poland and Hungary as well have both spoken, haven't they, of Russian oligarchs who are profiting from grain exports to Poland. What, though, do you think is the real situation for Ukrainian farmers?
What they've said is that it's Ukrainian oligarchs who are profiting from these grain exports. This is an attempt by them to say we're not against the Ukrainian people, we're against the bad guys, the so-called Ukrainian oligarchs who are the ones really making money out of these grain exports. The fact is, agriculture accounts for more than 10% of Ukraine's GDP compared to just 2% of Poland's. Farms and agricultural businesses in Ukraine tend to be big businesses. I've made reports with several Ukrainian farmers, and they weren't poor people before the war. These are people who have big companies. They employ a lot of people. It's an important part of the economy. The Poles and Hungarians seem to think that that is a justification for calling them oligarchs. The Ukrainians would say that's very unfair. These are people who have suffered massively, lost millions as a result of Russia's invasion, their fields being mined, lots of territory being occupied, and this inability to export to their normal traditional markets in the Middle East and Africa. So they may have been rich before the war, but they're certainly people who are suffering a great deal. I just would say, though, that the Ukrainian stance on Poland's farmers is they don't believe the Polish farmers are suffering as a result of Ukrainian exports. I've also spoken to Polish farmers. They say that's clearly not true. There is a genuine problem.